How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me, as usual, is Leonard. This is a show about pro wrestling, and this week we are going to be presenting the Ultimate SummerSlam card. Right, we are going to be we each assembled our own SummerSlam fantasy card, our own very own dream card. And Leonard, why don't you tell everybody what the criteria was for this?
Right. So in the past, when we've done rebooks, it's been a very specific show. But here, it's more of a broader fantasy idea where we're able to draft an Ultimate SummerSlam card using anybody who has appeared on a SummerSlam. So if they've wrestled on a SummerSlam, they can wrestle here. If they've been a manager, a commentator, an authority figure, they can appear in those types of capacities as well. And with these rebooks, we give each other some stipulations. So along with this, we had to designate a venue, which has to be a venue that has held a SummerSlam at some point. We had to designate commentaries who have worked the SummerSlam at some point, not necessarily together. We had to have WWF or WWE world title, tag team title, IC title, and some form of a women's title match. And the person holding the belt has to be someone who was a champion at SummerSlam. They could have been the champion coming in, they could have been the champion going out, but they held the belt at a SummerSlam. Plus, we had to have a steel cage match, which there has been a handful of steel cage matches at SummerSlam. And also, we had to have a non-traditional tag team match. So a tag team of non-traditional partners, I should say, because that was a hallmark of early SummerSlams as well. And when getting into this, I noticed that I should have also designated a special guest referee. That seemed to have popped up a few times. But I actually do have a match with that. And I have 10 matches. And if we want to get into it, Chad, I'll let you go over your venue and your commentary team.
All right, so I decided to hold this at the Nassau Coliseum in Uniondale, Long Island, New York. That was the SummerSlam where The Rock got defeated by the rookie Brock Lesnar, 2002, I believe. And, New York is obviously a popular state for WWF, WWE, but I think that this was a good crowd. I think Long Island has an underrated crowd in terms of how into the events they are. I've been there myself. So, so that's my venue. And on the call, we're just going to go with JR and the King.
Traditional. Okay, so I went, I think, non-traditional for both of these. One being, I went with the Cleveland Brown Stadium in Cleveland, Ohio, which hosted the 2024 SummerSlam. And that's because I wanted an outdoor venue. I thought that seemed very SummerSlammy to have something outdoors. Wembley was an option, but I think AEW has really made Wembley their own the past few years. And being an Ohio boy, I know that time of year, it's actually pretty nice up that way because you're on the lake, so you can get some nice breezes. So the weather should be decent for the show. I also considered the Staples Center, which hosted several SummerSlams in a row at one point.
I thought about Ohio. I actually thought about putting something there. I thought about Chicago just because that's a good venue, and Wembley crossed my mind. But if I was going to choose Wembley, then I would have felt the need to put certain people in the main event or profile certain people because it's there, and I didn't want to do that. So, anywho,
yes,
I also chose 10 matches, like I believe you did. I tried to have us match in this case. I tried not to overthink this. I actually assembled this card pretty quickly, and I realized that if I spent any more time on it, that I was going to be second guessing a lot. So
I did the same thing. I kind of put it together. I went back and I had 8 matches. I went, well, let's go 2 more. And that seemed good. So anyway, my commentary team, I'm going to go with Gorilla Monsoon and Wade Barrett. Literally.
So you're going non-traditional. Interesting. All right.
Yeah. Because it's literally the biggest commentary team possible. Because I just like the visual of these 2 huge dudes sitting behind the desk together. And I think that Monsoon and Barrett would have a chemistry similar to Monsoon and Ventura.
Probably, yeah. I get Wade Barrett's bigger than Ventura. I guess he is. I'll take your word on that one.
Yes. I don't know Wade's height, but I believe he is. He may not have been as muscular as Ventura, but he's definitely taller than Ventura.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, Should we go to our first match?
Yes, first match, back to you.
All right. Unpredictable one for my opening match. It is going to be in the big blue steel cage.
Oh, opening with the steel cage. All
Yep,
right.
because I think on the last one of the other rebooks we did, I put a steel cage in the middle, and you're like, oh, they're gonna have to set it up and take it down, like, and so I chose this specifically so that the setup would already be there, and all I have to do is take it down after this. And
All right, then you're going to have a laugh at me a little bit later on, but go
it's going
ahead.
to be Hulk Hogan versus Gunther in the steel cage to open the event. So I thought that I wanted to put Hogan on it, obviously. A lot of people probably would have put Hogan in the main event. There's a lot of dream opponents that we could probably put with him. But I thought that Gunther made the most sense, actually. If I'm going, I tried to go with a, old school versus new theme in a lot of these matches.
Yeah,
And
I did.
I really think that somebody like Gunther, who is a modern wrestler but possesses a lot of qualities that could be translated well to somebody in the 80s. And Hogan was known for going up against monsters, of which I think Gunther certainly fits that bill. And I think that the storyline here could have been any number of things that we saw Hogan do in the past. I think Hogan performed well in steel cages, especially the big blue steel cage. So I think that this would have been a decent Hogan match. I suppose you want to start it off with him going over Gunther. We could talk about, Gunther's going against Aldis here coming up. I didn't mention that. The reason we're doing this, obviously, is because SummerSlam's coming up on the 1st and the 2nd, and it's being held in Minnesota. I don't know how ticket sales are. Last I heard, they weren't great. So, yes, Gunther is performing at this one against Nick Aldis. That's exciting for him. But I'd probably have Gunther lose here.
I briefly thought about Hogan Gunther, actually, because of some of the same dynamics that you mentioned. And definitely a steel cage, I think, helps Hogan a little bit. So I like that matchup a lot. And I didn't consider it in the cage, but I did consider it for a moment. So a lot of times when we talk opening matches, we want it fast paced. We want it high flying. We want something to wake up the crowd. And I'm going with something that I believe I've seen on a few dream match lists. I'm going to do AJ Styles versus Eddie Guerrero.
Ooh, see, that's a good one. That would be a great match for sure. And this is why I'm glad I didn't spend too much time on this, because I didn't use either of those guys. And you would think that I would have used at least one of them, but that is a great match, and both those guys can work with anybody. So you have two guys that can work with anybody.
And they just kind of missed each other too, which is a shame. But I could see this match in and of itself building well, a lot of near falls. I could see Styles trying to use the frog splash. I could see Eddie trying to use the Styles clash. I would probably put Eddie over here. I think Styles would be honored to put Eddie over. But just a good match. And I would give this a lot of time too, at least 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So my next match is going to be for the Intercontinental title, and it is going to be Bret Hitman Hart versus Daniel Bryan.
Okay.
So a lot of the obvious dream matches for Bret Hart that people have talked about over the years, I wanted to not go with the immediate one for him. I think it makes more sense for him to go for the IC title. And I could have put a stipulation here, like a submission or something like that. I really don't think you need to do that. These guys were known to have, like, a lot of their matches would have quick roll-up finishes. I think you could go with something like that here, and these guys would put on a classic. So.
Yeah, and you'll see I did something similar a little bit later on. I agree with you. I consider, when I think SummerSlam too, and maybe that is because of 92, I think of Bret Hart more as the IC champ than the world champ when I think SummerSlam. And definitely, as you'll tell, that's a thought I had as well, but we'll get to that. I think I noticed there was one, I think it was TLC 2 was at a SummerSlam. So I decided to book a TLC match for the World Tag Team titles. So again, going cross-generational, I've got the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, who did compete as a tag team in 88. Some people may go, did they? Yep, they were there in 88. Versus the Hardy Boys of Matt and Jeff versus the Uso brothers of Jimmy and Jay. So, of course, the Hardys are the kings of the TLC, along with Edge and Christian and the Dudley Boys. the Hardys just felt to me more like the team to use here. I did consider New Day as well, but decided the Usos again fit this style better. I would love to see Dynamite Kid in a match like this because Davey's going to be doing all the muscle spots, all the power spots in a match like this. I would probably just have the Hardys go over since they're more versed in a TLC type situation.
That's not what I would have predicted for this.
Then the other two, you probably would have said I would go with the Bulldogs.
Well, either them or the Uso. You know, I feel like I don't know why. I feel like the Hardys would get their clock cleaned by the Bulldogs in this because, like, the Usos being Samoans, like, I feel like they'd be able to hold their own against like a rough team like the Bulldogs, which they certainly were. But I feel like the Hardys would be bumping all over the place, potentially to their career end against these two teams.
You know, when you put it that way, I think you're probably right. Maybe having the Usos squeak it out might make more sense. But anyway, I mean, this is just going to be a lot of high spots. Like you said, I think a rough physical match. Just a cool idea, I think.
Absolutely. My next match is Mr. Perfect versus, we'll just say, Mankind in a Falls Count Anywhere match. I thought that I wanted to put Mick Foley on here somewhere, and I was trying to think of a good opponent for him to go against. And because Mick Foley worked in a bunch of different eras. People maybe not always necessarily think about him in that way, but he definitely did. He worked with a lot of different people, and he did not ever work with Kurt Hennig.
Oh,
they again, when you talked about Styles and Guerrero kind of being like just missing each other, these two kind of were the same way. They just kind of missed each other. They were around, I think, at the same time, but never in a singles match against each other.
Yeah, right. I mean, Jack was in the NWA when Kurt was in the AWA, and then when Kurt went to WCW, Jack went to to WWF and ECW.
I think you could go with like a storyline here, Mr. Perfect being the cocky, arrogant person that he is. Everything has to be perfect. And you have Mick Foley or Mankind or Cactus Jack, whichever persona you really want, being this kind of rough around the edges, sloppy looking guy. I think that storyline writes itself. I really think that these guys would have good chemistry too. That's kind of what I tried to do with this card. I tried to go with people that you don't think would have chemistry instantly, but that when you look at it, they probably would. So that's why I went with that.
I think the promos would be good here too. I had Kurt in my mix, but did not use him. I didn't think to use Foley at all, but I really like that. A Falls Count Anywhere match. I think while that leans maybe more towards Foley, I think that it would be very interesting to see what Hennig would do in a match like that.
Yeah.
So next up, I have my women's title match, and I've got Rhea Ripley defending against Paige. So Goth Darling versus Goth Darling versus Goth Darling here, if I can get that out. Of course, this would be original era, top of her game Paige, because I think she would probably be viewed as the underdog to Ripley here, kind of based on size and Ripley's intensity. I can also see Ripley bullying Paige on promos, but her playing a scrappy babyface, garnering a lot of sympathy, support from the crowd. But I think peak Ripley is just better than peak Paige. I think she probably mauls a peak Paige. But I was basically just looking at the championship matches, for the past kind of 20 years, I think I looked back and was kind of just picking out names. And again, because of their personas, how they're both goths, but goths in a different way, I really just like the idea of putting them against each other.
So I like this match, and what's interesting about this particular match is that it could still happen.
True.
They are both in the same place right now. They are both faces, of course, but this could happen. And, I want to say that this is like an obvious match for WWE to plan someday, but if history, even when Vince around, has taught me anything, it's that the obvious matches don't always happen. So we'll see if it does, but I think that Paige is a natural heel and could pull that off. This match would be good, by the way. I think it really would be good. Cool. Next match is for the tag team championships. I have the Mega Bucks of Andre the Giant and the $1 Million Man versus Demolition versus the Shield of Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins versus the Brothers of Destruction, Kane and Undertaker, in a fatal four-way match for the tag team titles. I didn't initially envision this as a fatal four-way. Initially, I was like, how do I use the Undertaker? I got to use him somehow. And I was like, oh, I looked at the cards and I was like, oh, wow, the Brothers of Destruction performed at one of the SummerSlams. I'll use them. And then from there, I was like, you know what? Maybe I could use a bunch of different eras here and fit a bunch of people in, kind of like, WWE would do. Like, got to have more people on the card. But I chose these teams because I think all these teams could really hold their own against one another. I think that this is pretty evenly matched as far as how good and how big and rough these teams are, to the point where you might not know instantly who would win this. So that's why I would go with this. And, if I'm going with a winner here, I might go with either Demolition or the Brothers of Destruction.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of seeing Taker and Andre in the ring together, and Kane and Andre.
That was my thought, because again, the Undertaker worked for a long time, faced a lot of different people. I was like, who has he not faced? Andre came to mind.
Yeah, I mean, he was there just as Andre was retiring, know, and so that I think would be worth it alone. Yeah, I really like that. Who was the other team?
Demolition, the Shield, Reigns, and
Shield. I forgot Shield. Yeah, even Reigns and Andre might be neat to see again.
That's true. Yeah,
as well. And again, I like Demolition. I said these are all teams that I mean, there's going to be a spot at some point where I want to see Lucha Andre. I want to see Andre just jump out.
As I'm thinking about it, the Undertaker would often go over the top rope, and they had a video talking about Big John Studd doing that in front of Andre, and Andre beating the ever-loving crap out of him because that was Andre's thing. Nobody else was allowed to do that.
Yes.
So you'd have Kane and Undertaker and some of these guys walking over the top rope, and I feel like that would, it'd be
probably take Andre off. It might turn into a different kind of match than he would think. Oh man, just a lot of cool visuals in that one, I think, with the combination of guys. Next up, I've got LA Knight versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. A lot of people say the Knight copies Austin and Rock too. You're going to have a Yeah Dummy versus What promo contest heading into this match. I wanted to use Austin, and I wasn't sure who to put him against. And then it kind of came to mind, well, a lot of people compare Knight to Austin. So that's an easy storyline. Austin thinks he's copying him. Hey, no one's better than me. I'm going to prove I'm the original. I'm the best. This is probably going to be the Attitude Era Austin, brawling, going outside the ring, that type of thing. I would definitely give Austin the win here, but I think it might be neat just even to see some promos between these two.
The promos write themselves. Yeah, what? I mean, God, that writes itself. I mean, that's all those guys would have to do in the ring, at least in the first promo, and the crowd would be loving it. Yeah, I think it makes sense. There's a lot of people for Austin to face. Unlike other people on this list, his time on top was relatively short. I think that this would be a good match. Gosh, LA Knight is a separate topic altogether. He is so close. Things keep happening that prevent him from really getting to that next level. I want to say that, he might be happier somewhere else, but like he's older and he's so close that like, I hope that it works out for them and WWE finally pulls the trigger on him. But I think this would be a good match. I think they'd have chemistry for sure. My next match is just a singles match, and it is The Rock versus Ravishing Rick Rude with Bob. This, to me, I went with because obviously these guys didn't face each other, but I think the promos of this would be amazing because Rick Rude plays like not necessarily a chicken shit heel, but like close to it sometimes, that like I really feel like he and The Rock would mesh instantly. And I think that they would put on a really good match too. I think that, again, I think these styles, although not the same, I think would mesh. And you put Bobby Heenan into the mix, and I think, gosh, Bobby Heenan and The Rock doing promos, that's money. So
yeah, I can't even picture what that would be like, but it would be just gold. Yeah, I think the promos would be good, but I think the match would be good. I think these both guys work a style like how Rude always did the crazy sell of the atomic drop. I mean, that Rock's going to hit with an atomic drop. The way I think he would sell like the people's elbow, things like that, I think would be just great. I never would have thought of that. Love it. So I got my IC title match, and it's close to yours. I've got Bret the Hitman Hart as champion, defending against Daniel Bryan and Kurt Angle. So a triple threat match. Because originally I thought Hart Bryan, and then I thought Hart Angle, because I think that might be a more showy match than say,
Right.
Hart Bryan's the more technical match, Hart Angle's the more showy match. And then I said, hey, why can't you have both? So I decided to book this as a triple threat. And I kind of like the idea of maybe Angle steals the title, and then that causes Bryan and Hart to go off, and maybe they have a submission match or an Iron Man match at Survivor Series. So much like you, I was thinking we got to get these two guys together. But I just like the idea of doing the triple threat, because I think Angle, Hart, and Bryan Hart would both be great, and I couldn't make up my mind, so I didn't have to.
I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, it's a tough decision to make, because the obvious one, at least the one that was talked about for a long time, because it was suggested in real life, was Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle. Yeah. I think Kurt Angle has talked about how he even made a phone call to Bret Hart one year to see if that was possible and if he would do it. But this was post-concussion, and it just wasn't going to happen, unfortunately. But the fact that it was floated, is interesting, because I think that any combination or all three, as you just did, of these guys would have a great match. Because Bret Hart's style, although a little old school, obviously these two guys would be able to fit right into that nicely. So for sure, I like that one. Mm-hmm. My next match is my oddball tag team match, Leonard. This is the one that gave me the most trouble. I'm not going to lie. Because I was trying to think of ways to do this where it made sense, and you could have a feud as well, but there's a lot of elements to it. So here's what I have. I have Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes as a tag team going against John Cena and Randy Orton.
Oh, I kind of like that.
Yeah. So initially it was going to be John Cena and Cody Rhodes, and I didn't even see what I did initially. Whereas, if I had said it out loud here, you would have been like, "Oh, father versus son." And I looked at it and I was like, "Oh man, that introduces a whole separate element to it." I was like, who makes more sense to go to be a tag team with John Cena? It would be Randy Orton. Mm-hmm. So I did it that way, because you kind of have two different teams of rivals going against, another team of a different era. So I thought that dynamic would make this entertaining at the very least.
Yeah, and I think you could work a storyline where, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Hey, Flair's like, I respect Dusty, so even though, we feuded forever, hey, I feuded with Orton forever, whatever. You can definitely make that a very interesting storyline.
And you can have Cody do a run-in.
Cody could do a run-in. And whose side is he on?
Well, he'd probably be on his father's side.
Probably on his dad's side, yes. But you could do that. I was harking back to the Hulk Hogan doing the run-in, for the NWO formation. So here's where things fall apart for me, because I have an intermission, because we're going to set up the steel cage for the middle of the show.
Okay.
So in the intermission, I'm going to have a bikini contest. Miss Elizabeth representing the 1980s versus Sunny representing the 1990s versus Trish Stratus representing the 2000s versus Kelly Kelly representing the 2010s versus Scarlett Bordeaux representing today.
Wow. Okay.
So again, I see. Again, I thought of doing the cage match in the middle because I wasn't going to close with it, and then of course naturally I'm thinking, well, I got to do something. So let's do a bikini contest that can be done on the stage, and I thought this was a really great way to kind of cross eras with the different popular women that was going on. For the 2010s, I really kind of racked my head. I wanted women who weren't necessarily known to be wrestlers. Of course, Trish Stratus is here, but she comes in as a fitness model and being considered one of the best bodies ever, in wrestling history. So I wound up going with Kelly Kelly there. And then I thought about Tiffany Stratton for today, but I wound up going with Scarlett Bordeaux, who's always more of a valet and kind of had that old school, I'm just a sexy woman kind of gimmick to her, smoke show Scarlett Bordeaux. So, you know what? I think and I thought Mandy Rose too, as well, to throw in.
Oh, yeah.
This is just some eye candy. I think it could be fun. Definitely, I think Sunny is playing the heel. I believe Trish would probably win, but I think a lot of nostalgia or a lot of I don't want to say sympathy votes, but I think Miss Elizabeth would have a following in something
Sure,
like this.
for sure.
But probably Trish would win. So this is just kind of a fun time killer. And again, a bikini contest has a summer theme to it.
Yeah, I like that. So since that's not a match, you can go ahead with your steel cage match.
Okay. So my steel cage match is the absolute worst car crash possible. I have the Undertaker with Paul Bearer against Zeus with Ted DiBiase and sensational Sherry Martel.
It's hilarious that you mentioned Zeus. I thought about using him.
Yeah. So again, I want to use Undertaker, and I couldn't think what to do with him. And I thought about him being in my cage match. And then I kind of came up with the idea that Undertaker's had like really bad opponents at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
Like he's had John Gonzalez, he's had the Underfaker.
This is a Bruce Pritchard special for sure. I'm going to have you go against Zeus.
Yes. So I think what the storyline here is that Ted DiBiase is still sour at the Undertaker for beating the Underfaker and for getting out from underneath his thumb as being the guy who brought him in. So he's going to go get the baddest dude he can get, who is Zeus. Now, a steel cage match would help to kind of cover up some of Zeus's shortcomings, as it were,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I also think the guys on the outside would do some stuff. Like, I would love to see Sherry hit like a tornado DDT on Paul Bearer off the cage.
A tornado DDT.
DDT comes off the cage. I'd love to see like DiBiase do a fist drop off the top of the cage. Down on the Taker. I mean, Taker wins, definitely.
I feel like that's more realistic than Sherry doing a tornado DDT to anybody, but
she was an excellent worker. Excellent.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
This is just the funnest car crash in the world. And then when I put together, I was like, that is stupid. You shouldn't do that. But the more I thought about it, the more I loved it.
No, I like that. And I think that you need a match like that in the card somewhere, something that's entertaining, but obviously won't be a technical classic. And I'm going to segue into mine, which is Brock Lesnar versus the Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, geez.
Here's why I did that, because the argument could be made that, gosh, you want to see Brock Lesnar use his wrestling skills, his collegiate wrestling skills, I should say, and go against somebody like that, would mesh well with that. That's not what they do with Lesnar anymore. It's just not. It hasn't been for a very long time. So Lesnar kind of has these short, crazy matches. He's always, hyped up. Who else is hyped up? The Ultimate Warrior. Like, can you imagine, like, you can picture this match, and I challenge anybody not to be able to picture what this match would look like in their head. You can see the shoulder blocks to start the match.
Yes.
You can see Lesnar getting, the Warrior into the corner and doing the shoulder thing that he does in the corner. This match would last like 4 or 5 minutes, and it doesn't need to last any longer than that. Obviously, I'm going to have Taker, or I'm sorry, not Taker. I'm going to have Warrior take the F5 because that visual, I think we all want to see. But I also think that the Warrior could probably, in his peak, press slam Lesnar.
That would look cool. I'm also seeing where Lesnar would like hit like a release German and Warrior would just no sell it.
Yeah, that's true. This would be no sell city, but back and forth. But yeah, would this match be great? Nope. But it only has to be a few minutes.
And I think the crowd would be nuclear for it. I really think so, especially if you kept it short. So not too creative with my next match. It's something everyone talks about. For the head of the table, it's Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman versus The Rock. Still a match we could see at some point. They did tag team, but they have not faced each other. Everyone has asked for it. Everyone has clamored for it. Might as well do it. I know not too creative. But I mean, this is a match I think these guys would work well together, good chemistry together. I think this would just be a pretty solid match, good storytelling, maybe not good technical match, but good storytelling. Again, something I almost talked about, but it just makes so much sense. You got to do it if you have the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is probably this WrestleMania coming up in Saudi Arabia, based on the fact that they're going to want to put a really big, high-profile match. I think this is probably the last one that you'll potentially be able to see this match happen. if it happens. Who knows what The Rock's schedule is movie wise? But yeah, I agree with everything you said. Though I think these guys would have chemistry, and I think it would be cool to see this match happen. I still think that this would be a fun main event, even if it's in Saudi Arabia. So my next match is the one cliche dream match that I went with on this card because I wanted to use at least one of these guys, and I could not think of a better opponent for either of them to go against, and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus CM Punk.
Sure.
This match has been talked about before. They've had interactions with each other before on WWE television. Everybody talks about how great the promos for this would be, which I agree. I also think that this would be, two guys that are, pretty basic, like not basic brawlers, but I think that their styles go together pretty well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that if you look at Austin's match with Kevin Owens, I don't think that this one would be too dissimilar from that. This would be a cool match to see. I think this would be one of the highlights of my card because of the two people involved. So I thought this one was pretty obvious.
Yeah, it is. I used Punk in a different way. As you know, I used Austin in a different way. But yeah, I definitely think that these are guys who have technical abilities, but they don't necessarily use them. I think this is a match would go outside the ring. But yeah, love it. And again, the promos would be good. We talked about my Austin promos. Punk Austin promos would be great as well. So this is the last match I came up with, and it was my sort of getting the most guys possible on the card match. In an elimination tag match, or what we might call a Survivor Series match, I have DX, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Road Dogg, and Billy Gunn versus the Four Horsemen of Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Sid. So the Four Horsemen were never together in the WWF, of course, but all these guys worked. And this was the only match where I looked it up because I wanted Barry Windham. Barry Windham was never at a SummerSlam that I could find. And I could have used Luger, but Sid is better than Luger. And we always talk about the great reaction that Sid always gets, no matter what. So, I just think this is a way of getting some names on the card. I think this is a very interesting dynamic. In real life, Triple H and Shawn Michaels are going to go over because they've got all the swag or stroke, you might say, in the back. So they would probably wind up being the ultimate survivors here. But just seeing two of the greatest stables ever in history who've never crossed paths in any way, shape, or form, really, Flair and Michaels and Triple H that have connection. But to do something like this is electric. I think DX is best will be your anti-face faction. They're probably going to get the crowd reaction. But I think this might be interesting. I think you're going to see a lot of really interesting pockets of stuff going on. Like I think even Billy Gunn, Tully Blanchard might be really fun. Yeah. I think Shawn selling for Sid, which he always sold well for Sid, would be good. So it was just the last thing I thought of that made me go, yeah, that's something that probably you wouldn't think of, but works for what we're doing here today.
I think Michaels and Blanchard would be a good match.
That would be good too. I did Triple H Blanchard too. I think Triple H at his peak against.
Triple H worked with Flair. So I think that I think this would be cool to see. We they did the whole DX versus NWO thing, or at least
something. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this would be awesome as well. This would be definitely a highlight for sure. And the video package would probably be cool. All right, my next match is the women's title match. This one I kind of changed a little bit, but I went with Alundra Blaze versus Asuka.
Oh,
I thought that because Alundra Blaze had worked with some of the Japanese women, I thought that this match made the most sense in terms of styles meshing, and I think that these females would put on a clinic. I think that this would be a decent match as kind of a lead into my main event. So
I love that you have that as your sub main. I agree with you that I think this would be probably a hidden gem of your card just on the technical aspects of it. I have my world title match next, and I've got CM Punk versus Macho Man Randy Savage. This was actually the very first match I thought of when we were doing this card. Great promos, great storytelling. I think their styles mesh very well. That they had one eye on traditional wrestling. of the past, one eye on the present and the future. I say give these guys a half hour. They're both. I say have them both kick out of the flying elbow smash. I would probably give Punk the win because he's got the go to sleep and the Anaconda Vice, so he has more better alternative finishers.
Right.
But I just again, this was the first match I thought of, and I would pay a lot of money to see this live.
Oh, for sure. And I thought of this matchup as well because again, I think that this is one of those matches where I think the styles would mesh really well. So yeah, this is a great main event, and I would absolutely pay any amount of money to see that. And it's just funny because you put Savage in the main event, as I did for the WWE Championship match. Although I went with Randy Savage versus Kurt Angle in the main event because, again, like these two guys can work with just about anybody. And I think Kurt Angle's technical abilities would go really well with just the kind of the classic wrestling style that Savage brought to the table. Like if you think about Savage and Steamboat, I think that these guys could really put on a great match that could be either fast paced or it could be a little bit more slower paced depending on what mood Savage is in. But yeah, I wanted to put a wrestling match at the end of my card that was like going to be, a barn burner. So I think we both accomplished that.
Well, no, I've got one more match left.
Oh, you got a match?
I've got my non-traditional tag team match.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going to close with Hulk Hogan and John Cena versus Andre the Giant and Yokozuna with Bobby Heenan. Special guest referee Jesse Ventura.
I forgot to put him in as a special guest referee. That's what I would have done somewhere too.
Yeah, so Hogan, of course, has history with Andre and Yoko. Heenan putting those two together to go against Hogan. Super altruistic babyface John Cena runs out to help his childhood idol Hogan. You can basically build that story very easily. So you have the super mega powers versus the super colossal connection. Even with Jesse as the referee, the faces have to win here to go over in the end. And Cena is deceptively strong. Everyone has said that. Big Show has said that, JBL. So to see Cena hit like the attitude adjustment on Yoko or Andre, like that's a visual, right?
Well, I mean, he would get two people up a lot of times. So I'd love to see him get both Andre and Yoko up on his shoulders. I think.
Yeah, crazy. I don't know if he could quite do that, but.
No, that's a great main event. And as you said, SummerSlam started with a lot of those kind of non-traditional tag team match main events. The one with the Mega Powers and, Elizabeth ripping off her skirt is like...
Yes, against the Mega Bucks.
That was like one of my favorite things ever. So, yeah, I think that these are both really good cards. And I think that there are so many more matches that we could have put on. There's so many more we could have used. Goldberg, Jericho, we didn't use.
Yeah.
You could have gone.
We could do this again next summer and not use any of the guys that we use this time.
That's a challenge. I like that.
That's a challenge and still put on a good show.
All right. Well, let us know what you thought of our fantasy cards. Let us know if you would have done something different in the comments. Check out our other videos. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. For Leonard, my name is Chad, and we will see you next time.